my friends, I am Corey from Super Kami Guru 9000, and welcome to Star Wars for 100 days! That's right, I'm making 100 Star Wars videos, all leading up to the release of Star Wars The Force Awakens, the 7th chapter in the greatest sci-fi saga of all time. Today we're going to try something a little different. No more character exposés, no more rants, and no more fun facts. Today I'm going to begin my vlog and review series of the hit 2003 animated show, Star Wars Clone Wars. Not to be confused with the 2008 iteration of the show, which is known as Star Wars The Clone Wars, which also spawned its own sequel spin-off, which is known as Star Wars Rebels. I am going to talk about these two series in length, but we're going to save those for later. Before we begin, let me give you guys a little bit of a background on what this whole Clone Wars series is all about and how it affected me as a Star Wars fan. Let me take you back to the year 2003. We were 2 years away from the release of Star Wars Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith. The story that would finally wrap up the Clone Wars, Anakin becoming Darth Vader, and him succumbing to the dark side, joining the Emperor, and beginning the Galactic Empire, taking over the galaxy. Safe to say, the wait for this movie was excruciating. But lucky for fans of the series, Cartoon Network pulled out all the stops when in 2003 they decided to begin a brand new miniseries which would detail the events, the battles, the characters, and all of the drama which took place during the Clone Wars. Not only was this series being produced by Cartoon Network, but they got legendary animator Genndy Tartakovsky to actually work on the series. You don't know who Genndy Tartakovsky is? Well, he has created some pretty famous cartoons, like Dexter's Laboratory, Samurai Jack, Symbionic Titan. He's even gone on to get critical acclaim by working on big animated features like Hotel Transylvania and Hotel Transylvania 2. Tartakovsky's style and love of animation was the perfect choice for this Star Wars miniseries, and I'd say the only complaint that most fans, including myself, originally had with it was that it's actually a true miniseries in every sense. Just about every episode is only about 3 to 5 minutes long, except for the last season where those episodes are doubled in length because, of course, they wanted to have more fanfare and build-up to the release of Star Wars Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith. Despite that, every single episode manages to include amazing action set pieces, lots of great characters, both good and bad. Jedi, droids, bounty hunters, monsters, aliens, Sith, they're all over this series, and honestly, I enjoy watching the 2003 version of Star Wars Clone Wars way more than I enjoy actually watching the prequel trilogy. One of the best things about Star Wars Clone Wars is that it's a very digestible series. It's only 25 episodes long, with most of those episodes being very short. But when you combine them all together, they actually make a pretty cool, cohesive story, which is filled to the brim with some amazing action, as well as some unique characters to the series, as well as some characters who made their very first appearance in this one. Case in point, General Grievous. But we'll get to him when we get to his episode, which is without a doubt my favorite episode of the entire series. But we're going to start from the very beginning with Episode 1, otherwise known as Chapter 1 of Star Wars Clone Wars. The first episode of the series is over in a blink of an eye, but honestly, it has so many great little animation moments. In fact, the episode actually opens up with this massive battle which is going on between the Jedi, the clones, and the droid army. The first thing that you actually see in the series is Yoda, who's riding on this weird tauntaun-looking creature as he's riding first into battle. He brings out his lightsaber, and then all of a sudden, all these other Jedi and clones just jump out, starting to demolish all of the droid army, and that's when we learn a little bit more about what's going on in the Clone Wars, which, if you haven't been paying attention to the movies, really there's no point for this, but honestly it's a great way to bring people up to speed. You have Count Dooku, who's going around to all of these different alien planets so that he can try and get their armies to defect from the Republic and join the Separatist army. This way they can begin their big galactic civil war of awesomeness. This gives us a great excuse to see a lot of the different planets and Jedi and character that we're actually going to see in this series. We get to see a lot of famous Jedi, not just Yoda, but you get to see Shaak Ti, you get to see Mace Windu, who has his very own episode dedicated to him, which is also, again, one of the most badass things from Star Wars Clone Wars. There are a lot of amazing moments in this series. They're almost too much to frickin' count. But the first episode is just establishing what the Clone Wars are and what the stakes are going to be. There's also another subplot in the first episode where Obi-Wan Kenobi, Anakin Skywalker, and Yoda are actually meeting with Palpatine, and this is when they decide to divide Obi-Wan and Anakin, which is going to end up being a really bad move and is actually going to be one of the first catalyst moments to pushing Anakin to the dark side of the Force. What's going on here is they're getting ready to have this massive battle on this planet which is known as Moonalist, where Obi-Wan Kenobi is going to go down to the surface, and Anakin is actually going to be taking command of the Space Forces. Obi-Wan and Yoda think this is a really bad idea, but again, Palpatine is just trying to be all buddy-buddy with him, trying to butter him up a little bit, and he's also trying to sort of make him all prim and proper so that he can turn him into his next apprentice. The end of the episode is all of the clones going off to war, and of course Anakin Skywalker saying goodbye to his secretive wife Padme Amidala as he gets ready to go off into an epic space battle. And that's the end of the episode right there. But there are so many little amazing animation cues just in that first episode that it's going to blow your freaking mind. Overall, the design of the series is one of my favorite things about it because it is reminiscent of Samurai Jack, but it still has its very own style to it. It still resembles Star Wars too. It's all there. The music, the sound effects, the characters, they all just work so freaking perfectly. Not only that, but that final shot is so incredibly iconic to me and definitely reminds me of a few key shots from the Star Wars films, especially when you see Anakin actually getting into his Jedi Starfighter, flying off into the sunset with all of the giant Star Destroyers going off into space. For some odd reason, it reminds me of the final shot of Empire Strikes Back, where Luke is watching all of these Rebel Alliance soldiers getting into their starships and getting ready to head off into battle. The most important thing about the first episode of Star Wars Clone Wars is that it's establishing that this war is taking place over a very large and massive scale, which is something that I don't think that the movies were really able to portray all that much. The Clone Wars that you actually see in the 2003 animated version of the show, you believe that a really big galactic war is going to be going on. And what I also love is, of course, they show you the scope of all the different characters who are going to be appearing. Now, I'm a hardcore Star Wars fan, but I do not remember every single name, especially those of the Jedi, for a number of reasons. One, a lot of them look really weird, and a lot of them have names which are just really hard to pronounce. Simple as that. But you get to see a lot of them in the first episode. You got Mace Windu, you have those two female green-skinned ones who are fighting against an army of freaking droids, you have that one guy who has all of the crazy tentacles coming out of the back of his head, and he's actually swimming underwater with his lightsaber, and that is going to be another episode later on, one that I do think is also very impressive. And if there's one thing that the series does right, it's the action scenes. They are so freaking great. In many ways, I do enjoy them more so than the movie versions, but that's a topic for another day. What I will say is, the first episode, while really short, is definitely a great hook. It's really going to make you want to watch the next episode of the series, and if anything, Star Wars Clone Wars is one of the best things to marathon through, because there is a new action scene just about every single 5 minutes, and it's always different, it's always varied, and it's always really inventive, and it's always masterfully animated. That's also what I love about this show. It's 2D animation with some sprinkles of CG in there, mostly for the big space battle sequences, but everything looks really clean, super angular, and just very unique. It's just a really beautiful show to look at, and just talking about it is getting me really pumped up again. What's really great, though, too, is that you can actually pick up this series on DVD, and it has like every single episode on it from Season 1 and Season 2, and they cut everything together almost like it's a movie. You can actually watch everything in like one sitting, and that's really, again, what makes this series just so freaking great. So, the first episode really is just establishing what the series is going to be about, just showing that the Clone Wars, as Yoda would say, are literally spreading like a fire across the galaxy. And it looks damn good doing it! So the first episode is freaking amazing. I highly recommend checking out the series if you have not. The one thing that I do find most interesting about Star Wars Clone Wars is that when Star Wars The Force Awakens came out, they started announcing that there's a lot of things in the expanded lore of Star Wars which is not canon. Apparently, Star Wars Clone Wars is no longer considered canon to the series, and the newer 2008 version is. I'm not sure if I want to believe this, or if I'm just going to choose not to believe it, because I love Star Wars Clone Wars so much, but it still doesn't diminish the fact that it's a well-done, competent, action-animated show that any Star Wars fan should absolutely check out. It is amazing. So check out the first episode, and make sure to join me as I review every single episode of Star Wars Clone Wars, all leading up to the release of Star Wars The Force Awakens and even more Star Wars videos, because we got a long way to go. So there it is, guys. That's my review and discussion of the first episode of Star Wars Clone Wars. Before you guys leave today, I want to hear your thoughts about this Star Wars miniseries. Were you around when they were airing this for the very first time? Did you tune in for every episode? Have you seen Star Wars Clone Wars? Do you have a favorite episode or character that appeared in the series? Please tell me in the comment section below. And thank you guys for watching my video. Make sure to like it and share it with all of your friends. Spam these videos all over the place if you can. Make sure to do it on social media as well. Remember, you guys can also check us out on social media. Thank you guys again for watching, and as always, may the Force be with you.